All right, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and convene the December 12th, 2017 Board of Supervisors meeting. Before we begin, I would like to introduce the supervisors that are here. From the Mattapanai District, we have Mr. Floyd Thomas. From the Madison District, we have Mr. Clayton Forehand. From the Bowling Green District, we have Mr. Jeff Seeley. From the Reedy Church District, we have Mr. Reggie Underwood. From the Port Royal District, we have Mrs. Nancy Long, and I'm Jeff Black representing the Western Caroline District. At this time, if we could stand for an invocation by Mr. Clay Forehand. Oh, Bob, no, invocation.
Excuse me. Let us pray. Lord, we pray for the vision and wisdom as we make decisions and conduct the business of the Caroline County. We pray for the unity and the mutual respect that you would want blessed upon us all. We pray for the continued resolve to make our community a better place and to live and prosper. And lastly, we pray for your continued love and understanding as we combat our own sins and endeavor to be the people you wanted us to be. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are now to the opening board comments. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir, I do have a couple, a few actually. One is I talked to Mr. Seeley just briefly before the meeting started, and I have been working with Mr. Nelson of VDOT. One of my constituents had a problem with the 207, 301 bypass signs pointing to Bowling Green. So I've asked Mr. Nelson to look into that. He is having his traffic engineers look at it. As Mr. Seeley and I just agreed before the meeting started, all of the signs that point to Bowling Green from the bypass appear to be wrong, so maybe we can get VDOT to look at that when they're here. Also attended Mrs. Long and I attended the VDOT 207, 301 long-range plan, and I'm sure she'll tell you about the public meeting they're having Thursday in Port Royal, but there were several issues with that long-term plan. For those of you who don't know, the state of Maryland is going to replace the Nice Bridge, so it'll be 4 lanes coming into Virginia, and they expect a lot more traffic. Unfortunately, the consultant that's working on the project never really contacted anyone from Caroline to figure out what was going on in Caroline. In the Carmel Church area, we have a lot of work to do because they want trucks to make a left turn going on to 95, and they also want trucks coming out of the industrial park to be able to merge onto 207 without a stoplight. So I think Chief Loftus, I found a place for our fire station and EMS center because there's going to be a lot of issues right there if their plan goes through. But I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that doesn't happen. I asked Mr. Wilson, I know we're going to talk about a historical marker today, but I asked Mr. Wilson after talking to the Department of Historic Resources, DHR, if we could get a list of all of the historical markers we have in the county to add that to our tourism brochure so we could have a nice tourism issue. And the last thing is I was very happy to go back to school with Mr. Black. On the last day of November, we participated in the Take Your Legislator to School. And I was very impressed at the students we have in the county, the faculty we have in the county, and the staff, because there was a great deal of enthusiasm there. And I'm very proud of that, and I think we need to make sure we get all of the positive comments about our school system out to the rest of the world so they can know how good it really is. And that was it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Forehand?
One quick one. Thursday of last week, I attended the Recreation Advisory Board meeting where we set some of the priorities looking forward from this point forward as far as capital funds. And you'll be seeing those from Mr. Howard. Just so everyone's aware, those meetings are open to the public. There are some appointed positions. However, everyone that would like to attend is given that opportunity. And there be willing participants in that. The meeting does move around the county because of our size and to make it easier for some folks to attend. If you have a single issue, that's okay. Or a single suggestion, excuse me. Anyway, those meetings do take place, and they're on the county website for attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First, I'd like to remind everybody that this Saturday evening is the Bowling Green Parade. It starts at 5 o'clock, I believe, and goes till everybody's made it through the review stand. Secondly, in conjunction with Mr. Thomas talking about the 301 corridor study being done, I've had an occasion to talk to the mayor and a couple of council members about many of the crossovers are being looked at to be closed that are on 301 going towards King George. Many of those they see as superfluous because they would have to extend the acceleration to deceleration lanes. And I will say that there was quite a bit of concern of all the folks in that corridor of those being closed. So we're going to have to be mindful of that plan and take a look at how we're going to overcome that. You can't just start taking away things because you think the traffic is going to be different than it already is. For those that, if you have to go to the landfill on Sunday, I will tell you that coming out of there sometimes can be very challenging and a very long wait. I know it's not going to get any better, but closing all of those cutovers isn't going to solve the problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Mr. Underwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On last Monday, I attended the RAAA board meeting. One of the discussions centered around the Fred bus. I know we've talked about taking away some of their funding, and they were very concerned regarding the funding for the Fred bus, as well as just to remind the board that of the members in the RAAA, our citizens of Caroline use RAAA in terms of traveling to and from doctors and meetings that they have, medical meetings that they need to attend, as well as Meals on Wheels, and they felt that that could have an impact on folks who are less fortunate or don't have transportation. So they really wanted us to take a look at the Fred bus and make sure we don't take away funding for some of those people who may be their only source of transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mrs. Long?
Yes, I wanted to say that I also attended the Bring Your Legislator to School Day with Mr. Black and Mr. Thomas. Buddy Fowler was there. We had a nice time, spent all day touring all the schools and seeing the children show off just how wonderful they are and what treasures they are to us. On December the 2nd, I was lucky enough to attend the Mattaponi Hunt Club Wounded Warrior event that they do every year, which they hold up at the Upper Caroline Firehouse. And it was a wonderful event, and the Warriors had some luck with their deer hunt, and everyone seemed to have a good time. And that's a wonderful function that Mattaponi Hunt Club puts together, along with support from Upper Caroline Fire volunteers. December the 3rd, I attended First Baptist Church on Giddy Station Road, who celebrated their 125th anniversary of service. On the 5th, we had a work session with the towing board. On the 7th, as Mr. Thomas said, we met with VDOT over in King George. That was a regional meeting. There is a public input meeting at the Port Royal Firehouse that's on Cumberland Street in Port Royal from 5 to 7 on the 14th. They will have big blow-ups of all the slides that we saw, and public input is definitely going to be there. As Mr. Thomas said, we definitely have a lot of work to do on that. December the 8th, I attended the tree lighting and Christmas gathering done with Park and Recs at the Port Royal Fire Department. We had our first snow. It was great. First time it's ever snowed when we lit the tree. Santa came to visit, and we had a wonderful time. And then prior to this meeting, we did have a joint session with the school board, which was very nice and informative. I also wanted to take a moment of your time considering we're going into the Christmas season, to read a little piece of a write-up that was done in 1986 by a former Marine Lance Corporal, James Smith, who wrote this called Merry Christmas, My Friend. And over the years, it's been changed and altered to fit all the different branches of service, the Army and the Navy. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, and you can look it up online, but I wanted to read this one section because it's sort of, maybe you'll know why I wanted to read it after I do. So about halfway through this, it says, his head was clean shaven, his weather face tan. I soon understood this was more than a man. I realized the families I saw that night owed their lives to these men who were willing to fight. Soon around the nation, the children would play, and grown-ups would celebrate on a bright Christmas day. They all enjoyed freedom each month and all year because of Marines like this one lying here. I couldn't help wonder how many lay alone on a cold Christmas Eve in a land far from home. Just the very thought brought a tear to my eye. I dropped to my knees and I started to cry. He must have awoken, for I heard a rough voice. Santa, don't cry. This life is my choice. I fight for freedom. I don't ask for more. My life is my God, my country, my core. And so read the rest of it online, but I want to ask that we all remember all our military, our active and our veterans and their families. There's so many who are separated at this time, and keep them in our prayers. And pray for their safety and for their reunion together soon. And I wish all of you the hope and the joy that comes with this Christmas season. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. That was pretty powerful. I would now I'll take a couple minutes to make some opening board comments myself. I had the opportunity with the same thing. I'm repeating kind of what Mr. Thomas and Mrs. Long said. The Take Your Legislature to School Day was fascinating. It was nice to see the kind of kids in their element, kind of what's going on in the Caroline County school system. And then at the end of the day, we had kind of a takeaway, and I was really impressed. Not that I wasn't impressed with all of them, but I was really impressed with what happened at Madison Elementary, so hats off to them. I also want to thank the Sheriff's Department. I had the honor of being the guest speaker at the Sheriff's Award Banquet this past week. There's a lot of kind of stirring stories of what some of our deputies have done over the past year, from saving lives to seeing some of the videos of what they had to encounter. And as far as some of the things that they're heavily involved in, I think one of the stresses that I think coming from Lieutenant Nutter and Major Mosier is it's not just about arresting bad guys. It's actually about helping people who have some addiction problems. So I think that's quite impressive. The Sheriff's Department is doing that. We did have a meeting with the tow truck operators, and I thought that went extremely well. There was a good dialogue, good discussion. I mean, that was kind of spearheaded by Mr. Underwood, so big thank you to him for helping set that up. I would also like to point out on Saturday night, of course, there's the Bowling Green Christmas Parade, but Santa will be at the Ladysmith Volunteer Fire Department. So if anyone has children in the Ladysmith area and they would like to go see Santa, I think they have a sign out there. I think that's from 6 to 9. One of the things I did want to point out, I know it's going to take a little time, but I did want to point out one of the things that you kind of see in the newspaper sometimes from this board is we get into discussions and we get into arguments, and we're 6 different people representing 6 different districts, and we don't always agree on everything, and that's 100% true. But I truly believe that each individual up here has the best intention of Caroline County, in their heart. And with that being said, I just kind of wanted to review just a couple of things that this board accomplished over the past calendar year. I know fiscal year is on a different cycle, but we were able to give $450,000 new money to the school system during the budget cycle. We were able to hire 6 brand new firefighters for the county, which gives Ladysmith area 24/7 coverage for the first time in its history. We were supportive of a drone program spearheaded by Chief Loftus, which has already shown dividends for the county. in the Lady Smith and Bowling Green areas now, people in need can use their EBT cards at the farmers markets in both Lady Smith and Bowling Green. We came out with quite a hefty budget surplus, which I'm sure you'll be reading about more. We made park improvements in both Lady Smith and Bowling Green to the basketball courts, tennis courts, softball fields. The school renovations that have been going on for the last 4 or 5 years saw their completion this year at both Madison Elementary and Caroline High School. We started a program to hire a third-party agency to kind of go out after delinquent taxes that we can't really go after. And with the help of the treasurer, we have brought in $91,000 in tax revenue that we would not have otherwise done so. We fully implement, and this is probably the thing that I think the employees and something that I think I'm probably, and as a board, we're probably most proud of this year. We have implemented a salary study that fully, basically, and we fully funded it, a recommendation from a outside company. So I think all the employees were very, very happy about that. So I just would like to say to the board that, I think it's been a pretty good year, even though we don't always agree on everything that's up here. So, and I would like to thank them for having the confidence to elect me this year as chair, and I look forward to the future years. So thank you. Oh, and one more thing, the county staff, Mr. Parton, Mr. Cully, it's been a pleasure to work with you guys. So, and all the counties, Mr. Fincham and everyone in the county staff. So thank you. At this time, we have, I'm going to take amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask Mr. Fincham if he would give us an update on the parking ordinance in the county, and I think he's prepared just to tell us where we are. So if we could add that as an informational item later in the board meeting, I'd appreciate it.
We'll do, how about 4B for unfinished business?
That's fine.
I have one myself. Does anyone else have anything? I just have an appointment to make that I've been, so I'll do that under between presentations and consent. So just make that 1B. Any other amendments to the agenda?
Move for the adoption of the amended agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Presentations and reports. The first presentation tonight is the recognition of Blanche Johnson upon the occasion of her retirement from Caroline County. And as my understanding, Ms. Johnson is not here tonight. So do you want me to read the resolution? Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and read the resolution that we have for Ms. Johnson into the record. A resolution commending Blanche Johnson on the occasion of her retirement from Caroline County. Whereas Ms. Blanche Johnson began employment with Caroline County in October of 1989, and whereas after serving in various roles with the Department of Public Works, she was appointed to her current position of account clerk in January 1998. And whereas throughout her career, Ms. Johnson has demonstrated flexibility in adjusting to new assignments and has performed her job with integrity, professionalism, and a can-do attitude. And whereas, as account clerk, she has played a vital role in the day-to-day workings of the finance department and made significant contributions to the success of the department. And whereas Ms. Johnson will retire from employment on December 31st, 2017, after 28 years of dedicated service. And whereas Ms. Johnson will be greatly missed by her coworkers for her sense of humor, positive outlook on life, and the enjoyment she brought to the workplace. Now, therefore, it be resolved, the Caroline County Board of Supervisors hereby commends and thanks Blanche Johnson for her accomplishments, her commitment to Caroline County, and her decades of public service. Be it farther resolved that the board conveys its very best wishes to Ms. Johnson and her family for a very enjoyable retirement. Adopted this 12th day of December 2017. Let's give her a round of applause. All right, next up, we have the recognition of Fran Hatcher upon her retirement from Caroline County.
Did you
So-
change the year to 2019?
Yes, exactly. All right, and we have a resolution here, Ms. Hatcher. Why don't you come on? Why don't you come on down?
Can't hide behind Gary.
All right, we have here, Ms. Hatcher, a resolution commending Fran Hatcher on the occasion of her retirement from Caroline County. Whereas Fran Hatcher began employment with the Caroline County in January of 2009, and whereas her knowledge, attention to detail, and professionalism had an immediate positive impact, and over the next 8 years she shaped the county's financial policies and strengthened the county's financial standing. And whereas few county employees have been involved in projects that touch so many different functions of county operations and have done so with such distinction and success as Ms. Hatcher. And whereas she has earned the respect and admiration of county administration, department heads, co-workers, and her staff for her dedication, professionalism, integrity, and work ethic. And whereas Caroline County recognizes Mrs. Hatcher's many accomplishments and the countless contributions she has made to the sound management of the county's finances. And whereas Ms. Hatcher will retire as Finance Director on December 31st, 2017, leaving behind a record of great success and big shoes to fill. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Caroline County Board of Supervisors hereby commends and thanks Fran Hatcher for her 8 years of exceptional service to the citizens of Caroline County. Be it further resolved that the board offers its very best wishes to Mrs. Hatcher and her family in a very enjoyable retirement. Adopted this 12th day of December, 2017. Ms. Hatcher, I know you'll be RVing over the next several years, but Mr. Cully and Ms. Hall have some gifts to present to you.
Mr. Chairman, the resolution should have had cash and accrual in there somewhere over the years, since we've spent so much time discussing that.
Fran worked directly for you as well. We have this little clock presented to Fran Hatcher for 8 years of dedicated service to Caroline County and its citizens. Best wishes on your retirement from the Caroline County Board of Supervisors and your fellow employees, December 12, 2017. And from all of us that work directly with you, thank you so much for all you've done in my 5.5 years and your overall 8 years of providing great financial leadership and sound management of the finance department. And you will truly be missed, and I know you know that from all of us that work directly with you. And so enjoy retirement. I'm jealous.
Thank you. I don't have anything to say, except you will be missed.
No speech.
Yes. Yep.
Don't drop the clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do appreciate this, and
You are very welcome, and safe travels to you.
I can't say that I'm unhappy about this being my last board meeting, because I'm very happy about it being my last board meeting, but I will miss working with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, next up on the agenda, we have the 2017 report for the Caroline County Agricultural Fair. Ms. Francine Whitaker. Hey.
How are you today?
Doing well, you?
I'm great. It's certainly my honor and privilege to be here tonight representing the Caroline County Agricultural Board, and I certainly welcome this opportunity. So we're going to talk about the 2017 Fair and Review. with this PowerPoint. You want to do the lights? Is this working? We might do this. It's black. I've got the wrong one.
Yeah, I don't know what that goes to.
Oh, well, I guess that's not the right one. It's a black remote. It's not. Would you like it just to stand there? You can hit, okay, I'll do that. Okay. Okay, 2017, our theme was It Wouldn't Be Summer Without It. We had the fair July 12 through 15. Okay, next slide. Okay, 2017 was a very difficult year for the Fair Association. As most of you know, we lost our matriarch and friend, Ms. Ann Tate, in early March. You know, without her, we wouldn't have been where we are today, and that she was the reason that we do have the fairground home over on County Fair Lane, and when that happened in 2009, it gave the organization the momentum it needed to reach the goals where we are today. So, sad year for us, but we did make it through. Next slide. And we're able to place a permanent marker at our fairground home in her honor, and so we're glad that we were able to do that. We wanted to stand the test of time. We want people to realize when they come onto the fairgrounds the significance that she made, her contribution she made to our organization. Next slide. Okay, as you know, the Fair Association, we're an all-volunteer association, nonprofit, 501c3, and being all-volunteer, a lot of hours are put in, greater than 5,000 hours are devoted to the fair's success, and that possibly is an underestimate. The fair is not just the four-year event, the 4-day event that we have each year. It is all year long in preparing for this event in order to support our mission of understanding agriculture history here in Caroline County and to educate about agriculture, business, and community activities. Next. Okay, this was a very successful year for us. We had almost 13,000 attendees, the highest to date since we've been keeping records. We did not have any rain at the fairgrounds. It rained around us, but it didn't rain at the fairgrounds, so we think we had some help from above on that. We had very favorable feedback, both verbal and our exit surveys. We take these surveys very seriously because that's how we know what we need to do differently and to improve what we are doing. Okay? We had some new events here in 2017. One of the things was the Old McDonald's Farm Parade. We kicked off the first day of the fair with this cute parade that was sponsored by the Home Goods Department. And we had 13 entries that they came, and it was children decorated, and the theme was Old McDonald's Farm. And that was a very successful event, and we are having plans to certainly have that again in 2018 as well. Okay? All right, we had new and expanded exhibits in the Jane and Arthur Flippo Heritage Center. I don't know if you're aware or not, but this is a foundation that they are very devoted to residents in Caroline and Hanover, and they have helped support us by providing funds for us to have a Heritage Center. And to date, we've only been there a couple years with this center, but to date we've got 25 vintage plows. 17 of them we know were made in Virginia, and a lot of them were used here in Caroline County. The gentleman in the slide is Mr. Brown from Doswell, and he has contributed part of his plow collection that has roots here in Caroline County. You see we have also obtained some family collections, a cool hay trolley that came from a local farm, and so we're continuing to expand this area, which certainly fits in with our mission as well for agriculture history. Okay? All right, we were very fortunate this year in that we had one of our fair members take on the task of expanding games. The Martin Pavilion was totally devoted to the game area, and that was very, very successful. We were able to solicit volunteers using children from the school systems to get volunteer hours like Beta Club, James Farmer Scholars, volunteers from Carmel School. So again, we wanted to work with the school systems. This was one way we did it for our volunteers, because without these volunteers from the school system, we wouldn't have been successful. But they helped not only during the fair, but also in preparation ahead of time and setup and cleanup as well. So this was very successful, and certainly plans are in place to continue this. And this is an area that was totally free activities for people who came with their children, and that's what we're trying to do, to have more free events for people as they come to our fair. Okay? All right, Degler Saves the Day. If you're not familiar, that certainly is an amusement company. They do provide amusements to the Virginia State Fair, but they're one of the largest, certainly in the on the East Coast. Last year, about this time, we had found out that our carnival provider was no longer going to be in the business due to health issues. So for a fair organization, that was a real emergency, because fairs scheduled this years out. But Degler saved the day for us. They were able to bring some of their rides to us so they could have the carnival aspect of the fair, and we are now working with them, and they're going to be our provider in this year as well. And that's one of the reasons we have moved back the date, so that they can accommodate us, and we're very fortunate with that. Okay? Of course, we continue to try to do free events at night, the free concerts, which we use dedicated sponsors. We don't provide or require any additional cover charge like other fairs do. So you can see we continue that to have entertainment for a variety of age and music types. Okay? All right, we certainly had returning favorites as well. These are things people like. The Mandy the Clown, our 4-H livestock shows, again, with our children's participation, the giant hay bale contest. Caroline's Barn with the petting zoo is very popular. The Courthouse School of Ballet, located up in Thornburg, they come and participate, and people love to see those children do their ballet recitals. And then Turkey Hill, the company Turkey Hill has been a very active supporter of the Caroline County Ag Fair. They bring their huge cow every year, and they bring lots of free ice cream. So we're very fortunate that we have that dedicated sponsor as well. It does not cost anything to provide that little extra for our fair goers. Okay? Of course, sponsors make it possible, and of course you, the County Board of Supervisors, are one of our largest sponsors. And without your support, we couldn't do what we do, and as well as organizations in the county and businesses and individuals as well. And we certainly thank you for that, and we appreciate all the help that you do provide for us, and I'm sure you're going to give us continued support. Of course, we look for affordable family fun. We've kept our admission at $5, 10 and under free. We have all these admission specials throughout the week. Bring in notebook paper, or non-perishable food items. We're trying to, provide these things for the school system, the food items for the food pantry, senior citizens, any number of ways to buy one, get one free to come in. So we want people to come in and have a good time and try to do everything we can to make that possible. Okay? All right, and one of the things we like to do also is the fair organization likes to give back and doing in-kind sponsorships. One of the things, we have Daycare Day, which is held during the fair, but not during when we're open to public. We invite the daycare centers to come and bring children, and they are able to participate in Caroline's Barn and our various shows, like Mandy the Clown is there, Circus Stella, and they do shows for the kids. And that way they can come and have a few hours to just see and and have a good outing. We hope we have more participation this coming year, because we're going to be in June and hopefully it won't be quite as hot. 4-H Agriculture Days, that's the 4th graders from the school systems who come to the fairgrounds in April, and that's an educational day. Of course, Ladysmith Day is in May, and then our Fall Fun Festival, which is the last Saturday in October, and that's a successful event in which we have free activities for everyone, tailgate trick-or-treating, and it's a way we give back. There's no admission for these activities at all. It's just an activity we want you to come and enjoy. And again, you help sponsor Ladysmith Day and Fall Fun Festival as well. Okay? All right, supporting our youth, I've already mentioned some ways we do that, which is very important to us, and that's what it's about, and that having the fair provides a venue for 4-H clubs to showcase their projects, not only in the livestock area, but also in the home goods area. Robotics is a big area. Our home goods chairman, Ms. Williams, has worked extensively trying to get involvement with the clubs, and the sewing club as well is very active. We've come up with special categories for these children, special ribbons to recognize their participation, as well as the future farmers. We support them throughout the year. We have seen growth in the Caroline High School Future Farmer organization in that they are now participating in contests. They're doing very well, and we feel like that our support of that organization has been helpful, as well as the culinary arts program with an annual scholarship to a graduating senior. Okay? All right. Promoting the fair industry is also something else that we do. One of the biggest things that we've done for the state of Virginia is we reestablished the Fair Judge School. We work in conjunction with Virginia Tech and the Virginia Association of Fairs. We have had at least 17 sessions to date, with 4 of them being held at the annual conference, which is in January of each year. We have 100+ individuals who've been certified to be judges. This is very a great accomplishment, and this was spearheaded also by our home goods chairman, Ms. Williams, who has received state recognition for her work on that project as well. So we're very proud of that aspect. Okay? Okay, the Fair Association, we have memberships in the International Association of Fairs and Exhibitions, which is very important. We can keep abreast of what's happening in the industry, things that are, whether they're good or bad. You know, when you have situations with livestock issues and what have you, you look to them for guidance. Also, Virginia Associate of Fairs, we're very involved in that organization. Our fair manager is current treasurer of that organization and serves on that board. So we're very fortunate to have representation and networking that we have in that organization. Okay? Okay, we're an award-winning fair, and you know that if you see our Facebook page and our website page. We did receive Best of Caroline for local event, Best Place to Take Your Kids. That's a Caroline Progress contest. And then we entered the Virginia Association of Fairs Communication Awards at the state convention, and we won Best Overall for Virginia fairs of our size. We are considered a medium-sized fair based on attendance, which is 7 to 30,000. We won 17 ribbons and 2 Best in Show. And this has to do, it's about our publicity and how we publicize and the things that we generate to spark interest in our fair. You can see you've got fair merchandise. It's one of the things. You see a picture of Ms. Tate holding the fair booklet that we make along with, in conjunction with the progress. Just want to take a minute to point out here, again, being volunteer, all of our publicity is done in-house by volunteers. Primarily, Ms. Tate does most of that. And so we're very pleased that we have that, and we save a lot of money that we have that talent within our organization. So we are very pleased that we do receive recognition as well. Okay. All right. Of course, we've got one of our youngest fairgoers saying he can't wait to come back next year. So what's important about 2018? Well, not only are we moving to June, which is June 20 to 23rd, but it's the 100th anniversary of fair being in Caroline County. We know there hasn't been 100 years of fair every year. We know that because we're doing research with the history. But it's significant in that the fair's been around for 100 years in this county. Next. Okay, in our research, we have found the original article from the Richmond Times-Dispatch in November 1918, where it says the first fair was held November 14 and 15 in Bowling Green, and it was a great success. Talks about livestock, poultry, home canning clubs, boys' corn clubs, farm produce. The very same things we do now, although we don't have corn clubs now, but it's the same things that we do now. It was an annual event. It was lively interest, and it talks about how it's going to grow. And they even had Governor Westmoreland Davis who came to this fair and said it was a wonderful showing for the people in Caroline County. So this gives us a lot to be proud of, and hopefully we're going to have certainly similar comments here in 2018. Perhaps the governor will come to our fair here 100 years later. We'll see. But this was very exciting to find this article, and it talks about how it was a success and how important it was to the county. And we feel like it's still an important part of Caroline County, and we're glad we're a part of it. Okay. And here is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making memories in Caroline County as we celebrate the 100th anniversary, and that's kind of our kickoff here, that we are going to make memories, and we know you want to be a part of those memories, and I'm sure you will be, and we're very excited about what's going to be happening. We just know it's going to be a magnificent event. We've been doing a lot of research trying to come up with actual history of our fair organization and what's been happening, what's happened through the ages. We're doing that through research with the Caroline Progress. So it's been pretty exciting and finding lots of cool things. So I would like, that's my last one, okay. All right, I would like to take a minute, as usual, and always we have some fair members here, and I'd like for them to take a minute to stand. And if you have any questions, I'd certainly be glad to entertain those. Okay, and that's all that I have for you. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next report is the presentation of the 2016-2017 audit.
Good evening. I'm Ann Wall. I'm with Robinson Farmer Cox Associates, and we're here to present your FY17 audit. This is the first year of a new contract for audit services with Robinson Farmer Cox, so as you can imagine, there's a bit of a learning curve in the first year on an audit, and we did perform field work we did preliminary work for a week in June, and then we did final field work for a full week in October. I want to report to you that the cooperation we received from staff we appreciated it, and we respected it. It was very professional and respectful. Really, Fran Hatcher really coordinates the audit. She really is our primary contact, or that position is, and she did a really good job working with our staff, but also communicating to all the other departments when we were going to be here and trying to ensure that, it's a comprehensive audit. You know, we're dealing with the schools, the treasurer's office, utilities, just making sure that all our schedules are in sync so that we can be efficient and get in here and get our job done. So we appreciated that. I think the board maybe received an electronic copy, and then you also have the bound copies of the audit report in front of you. This year I kind of looked, the audit reports just grow bigger and bigger every year. This one is 161 pages. And then there's a 12-page intro, so it's 173 pages long. In terms of, I just kind of, at some point I had a PowerPoint, but I just kind of want to go through just the engagement, what we were hired to do, the results of the audit. We're going to go through those. There were some financial statement findings that we'll spend a little time talking about, and then some future accounting changes. We'll go through those. But in terms of the engagement, you engaged us to perform a financial statement audit and a compliance report for the county for the year ended June 30, 2017. Local governments are subject to much regulation, and local government audits are subject to a lot of regulation as well. So your audit was subject to auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, the specifications for audits of counties, cities, and towns issued by the Auditor of Public Accounts that drives a lot of the work that your auditors do as part of the audit, the standards for financial audits contained in government auditing standards that are issued by the Comptroller General, the Single Audit Act, and the provisions of the Uniform Guidance. Both of those documents govern your federal program dollars. As part of the audit, we issued this report, which we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about, but there's also a required communication with those charged with governance. I think the board has received that as well. It's just a 3-page letter, and it's really conveying part of what I'm telling you right now, that we conducted this audit. Some of the information that's in that letter speaks to accounting estimates. Not everything in a financial report is derived from actual dollars. Some things are estimates, like the depreciable lives of capital assets. There's an allowance for uncollectible property taxes. So there are certain things that are estimates, accrued leave, net pension liability, and all the related items that are associated with that. So again, those are detailed, that's detailed in that letter. I also want to report to you that we didn't encounter any difficulties in dealing or disagreements with management. We did propose a few adjustments to the accounting system. Some of those are detailed in that letter, specifically GASB 68 pension adjustments, school capital leases, and then other entries associated with the schools. We did obtain management representations, and then there's some statistical information in the report that really is not unaudited, and so that's detailed in that letter. In terms of the results of the audit, I'm pleased to report to you that we did express an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. Our opinion on your financial statements, the opinions that we issue, that's really the only part of this document that's ours. The rest of it is, belongs to the County of Caroline. It's your financials and your financial statements. But our opinion on the financial statements is the first 3 pages of this 161-page document. And it is a clean report, and that's the highest, the unmodified opinion is the highest that you can receive. We also issued a clean opinion on the major programs and internal control over federal program dollars. Again, as part of the audit, we're required to test some of those, some of your highest dollar value federal programs. I did want to spend a little bit of time. We did identify some material weaknesses in financial reporting, and those are reported in the document that you do have in front of you. I think your reports actually have tabs in them, and the very back tab is called the compliance tab, and that's where some of these findings are detailed, and we can go through them a bit. The first one's really on page 156 of the report. And again, these are financial statement findings. The first one had to do with the school board's financial statements required material adjustments after audit fieldwork date to ensure that the statements complied with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, a lot of that really had to do with timing. Like I said, we were here in June, and then we're here in October, and this report is due to the state by November 30th. So when we're here in October, we really need or whatever date is selected, that we need the financial statements to be ready to be audited at that point. We all agreed on this date, and the school board's financial statements really were not in a position to be audited. All the payables and the receivables had not been recorded at that point. So that was noted as a finding. The second finding is noted on page 157, and this had to do with school federal program reimbursements. Again, the school fund is your biggest, probably receives more federal program dollars than any other department in the county. And most of those programs, or the bigger programs, are funded through federal program reimbursement requests. And a lot of those are receivables at the end of the year, and they had not all been filed. When we were here in October, there were reimbursement requests that were still being filed in September and October. And so again, it was hard to really, it was just a moving target to try to figure out what the receivables were at that point. So again, that also has to do with just timing, if those things need to be filed in a more timely manner. The third finding that we reported, financial report statement finding, is on page 158. And this has to do with the fact that the school board's on a separate accounting system than the county is. The county's on the Bright accounting system, the school board's on RDA. And so there needs to be a reconciliation of the two systems each month. And we found that reconciliations had not been prepared for the whole year. And so we had to work through that. So there were no formal reconciliations prepared. And then subsequent to audit fieldwork, so this is after October, we tried to roughly reconcile the two systems, and we ran into some roadblocks. The treasurer, she performed a reconciliation between the two systems. And again, a lot of the differences, as you can imagine, are those payables and receivables that have to get straight. But then there still was a difference in the expenditures of $73,000, again, between the two systems, how things got recorded. The treasurer's office, that's the control. So if the treasurer's office says school expenditures are $10 million, that is what they are, because that's what's gone through the bank. But the reason they need to reconcile is because the details are over at the school board. The school board knows if they're instructional or operations and maintenance or transportation, all the details are over there, so those two systems need to reconcile. And again, that reconciliation process just needs to be something that's ongoing, needs to be done each month. We identified two other findings, and these were not financial statement findings. Again, it gets back to when I talk about that your audit's governed by so many things, and so one of the things that we have to check for is compliance with some laws and regulations. And so the school board, there's a couple of things. The Code of Virginia, it details and requires school boards to advertise their budget and have a public hearing before it's presented to the Board of Supervisors, just like this board has to do that, but they're supposed to do it as well. And they're supposed to give the citizens 10 days. And again, the dates just, they advertised. Their public hearing was on January 25th, 2016 for the FY17 budget, and they advertised it on January 21st. So again, they didn't have that 10-day prior to let citizens know when the public hearing was. The other finding that we identified also had to do with the annual school report. Again, this is unique to school boards. Schools are required to submit an annual school report to the Department of Education by September 15th. I think that's the extended deadline. Or the extended deadline, September 30th. Caroline School Board's submission wasn't done until November 6th. And again, we use that document as part of the audit to see that it reconciles, but it's also just a statutory deadline. So we're compelled to report that in here as well. I'm pleased to report that other than these findings, we did not issue a separate management letter on any other items. And again, these 5 findings, 3 of which are financial statement findings. I think the school board is working on writing up a corrective action plan to address these items. We also need this as part of the audit. This report gets submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and they require that if there's financial statement findings, that there be a corrective action plan in place, and it needs to be submitted to them. So after that report is prepared, we will submit your audit report with that corrective action plan to them. Your report also has been submitted to the state. You know, the Auditor of Public Accounts requires that the audited financial statements and agreed upon procedures, and there's some transmittal forms that we prepare. And I'm pleased to report that that was sent off to them on November 30th. So you are in compliance with that. New this year, the Code of Virginia was changed. It was amended during the 2017 General Assembly session, and it requires localities to submit a notarized statement from the chief elected official, which would be the chairman of the board, and the chief administrative officer, which would be the county administrator, just certifying that the results of the audit have been presented to the board. So you can't submit that until after tonight, but tonight the results of that have been presented. So just make sure that that gets sent off to the Auditor of Public Accounts. Also, as part of this audit, we will prepare your landfill financial assurance, and we'll get that done before December 31st, before Fran's last day. That has to go to DEQ.
Ma'am, quick question.
Yes, sir.
161?
Page 161?
Yes, ma'am. You didn't discuss that one.
Okay. Well, that has to do with a financial statement finding from the prior year. If you can see up there, it says finding 2016-001. And so, again, standards require that the finding be put into the next year's audit report and detail whatever the corrective action was. And so we reviewed that, and we determined that the school board had implemented procedures that had taken care of the payroll cycle and the deficiency that was noted in the prior year. You're welcome. Again, we really haven't talked about any numbers in the financial report. I know I've spent some time reviewing those findings, but I will, and I'm not going to review probably any of the 161 pages of findings of numbers in here. You did end the year with your general fund balance of $24.6 million in your general fund. About $5 million of that was reported as restricted or committed for future expenditure, but $17.3 million of that was unassigned. So that certainly is in compliance. I think you just really have a minimum fund balance policy, and so you certainly are in compliance with that. Fund balance really is a measure of financial resources available in a governmental fund, and it really is essential that a government maintain adequate fund balance to mitigate, future risk or revenue shortfalls. And that was an increase of $1.6 million over the prior year.
Say that again?
This year's fund balance, ending fund balance in the general fund of $24.6 million, that's an increase of $1.6 million over the prior year's fund balance. That's on page 18, you probably could see that. It's Exhibit 5. And it's that very first column is your general fund, which is really your primary operating fund of the county. And the only other thing I really wanted to touch on, and then if anybody has any questions for me, I am here, future accounting and reporting changes. There's a footnote in here, footnote 18, that details upcoming changes, but really the one that's probably going to affect localities the most next year is GASB Statement Number 75, Accounting and Financial Reporting for Post-Employment Benefits Other Than Pensions. So it's effective for FY18. And so this statement, they say, is going to improve the accounting and financial reporting for state and local governments over post-employment benefits. But it is going to add additional disclosure in the audit report. There's probably going to be a really long footnote detailing your other post-employment benefits. And both the county and the schools will need to consult with their actuary, and you're going to need to get a new actuarial valuation that is in accordance with GASB Statement Number 75. So that's something that needs to happen, at some point during FY18.
Can I ask you a question there?
Yes, sir.
How long does that process take?
The actuarial valuation,
Correct.
it's not something you can get overnight. So, and you've got to consult with your actuary. I think it takes 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks.
How soon in the process, or to the end of the budget year, does that need to take place and you actually have those numbers available?
I would say we don't need it in our hands until this summer. So, it's not immediate.
So that is something we can start to calculate in April, May?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's up to you when you want to get that, but again, it's going to be a component of this audit report, so if you don't have it, it'll hold up issuing the report, it's just something to get taken care of.
Do you have a document that timelines when things should be available for the audit? Do you provide that to, like us, saying, you come June?
We do a planning letter, a pretty detailed planning letter for all the, for school boards, there's a separate one, then for the county, and we'll ask about the OPEB when we do the preliminary work, follow up on that and see if that's been taken care of, and if not, the push will be on. So, yes, sir, we do that.
So can we add to our agenda the timeline so that we get a report for those data items at certain junctures along the audit process? This is the second year in a row we were late, or the whole process was late. See, Fran, you thought you were done, retired.
This is my bread and butter, and I don't I go down swinging. We had our actuary, we do a OPEB actuary study every 2 years.
Okay,
And we had ours done this year, and it was done on time. And Ann had ours. The schools were a little bit late getting theirs in, but they still got it in on time. We will have to, I was unaware of going to have to do it again, since we only do it every 2 years. So it's just a matter, we are under contract with Milliman to do the actuarial study, so it's just a matter of contacting them, and they have to have their census data and that kind of thing, and it normally asks for the census data as of June 30th, so you can't send them the data until June 30th. So,
okay, so that was my question, is you really can't do anything till 30 June with that?
no.
Okay,
The other thing is, we developed basically a letter or an email that outlines when the auditors are going to be here and what things they're expecting to see when they come in June and then when they're coming back in the fall. I mean, that's done every year. So we can certainly forward that to the board for you all to know when that's going on, but that process is standard in every county. I mean,
We did it in May. We established actually in April with the auditors, years past, and Mr. Finney will take it over. They'll contact us with available dates, and I send those dates out to the schools, to social services, to the treasurer, and of course I have it for myself. Usually available dates, they let us know what it is, and they try to come as close to the end of June as possible, because that's, you're doing a whole year, so you don't want to have but so much when you come back for the second trip.
right.
So we have it all established, and once they come do their initial field work, they send us another letter, details everything, and I have it for the schools, have it for social services and us. We disperse it out. And mine is always done on time.
Based on the findings that we saw, I have no doubt that we would have known if it wasn't.
You're right.
Thank you.
That really concludes my prepared comments, unless anybody has any additional questions for me.
Mr. Thomas?
I do, Ms. Wall, thank you very much, and I guess I should say welcome back. You probably don't remember, but I think it was 5 years ago.
Yes,
You were the
sir.
auditor, so good to have you back. The fund balance you said on page 18
Yes, sir.
was 1.6 million, and
It's a 1.6 million increase.
1.6 million increase. Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I
sir.
understood. Okay, and I guess I should ask Mr. Cully, in our budget, we expected a fund balance decrease.
we budgeted for a fund balance. We use a fund
Right.
balance number to balance the budget, revenue to expenses. But our expenses were less than we had budgeted, and our revenues exceeded somewhat, I think, what we budgeted. Therefore, we ended up in a net positive situation.
How much, and that's understandable because budgeting, as Fran used to say, was not an exact science.
Correct.
We're estimating some numbers. What was the estimated number of the fund balance decrease?
If you go to page 91, it's Exhibit 11, it's the actual versus budget for the general fund, and it looks like it was $1,699,910 was the amount of fund balance that was budgeted to be used.
1.699.
See that in that first column on Exhibit 11?
999,910.
Yes, sir. 91?
Page 91.
1,000,006 what?
1,699,910. So, and this is really
That's on the original budget.
right.
Yes,
And
sir.
that was,
Does
that
that
was, that was
sound right?
amended up to about 1,743,171.10 is what I have on my sheet, after we made amendments to the expense budget, which you balance against, but
I'm just kind of do a little fuzzy math, not to make my head explode, but 1.6 and 1.6 is 3.2. So, as the auditor, you see a $3.2 million difference in what our budget fund was supposed to be and what it actually is.
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir?
Okay.
So we're going to use a deficit, we're going to take a deficit and add to it and then add to it. So
No, I wouldn't.
I don't know that I could do that math like that.
Again, if you're looking at page 91, that Exhibit 11, this
Right.
kind of confirms what Mr. Cully said. Your revenues came out 1.6 million roughly over budget. You brought in more revenues, and then your expenditures were about 1.5 million under budget. So that translates to the 3.2.
I'm just trying to, I don't have anything to do with what Mr. Seeley's saying. What I'm saying is, when we did our budget, we expected from this 20-some million dollar unencumbered balance, we expected to use 1.6 million.
Correct.
If everything had come out exactly, our unencumbered balance would have gone from 24 million,
Would have gone down.
24.6 to 23 million even. So that was a 1.6 that we didn't spend.
But
Well, we had planned to spend it, but we didn't spend it.
correct. That's if everything in a perfect
Right.
world. If your revenues and expenditures hit exactly, which when we budget that, and I
And
work
that
on it
never-
every year in budget, I
and-
always tell you that isn't going to happen. We're going to come ahead.
That
It's
never
just
happens.
Yeah, it's just a balancing number.
And I
Correct.
understand that. But my point is, from that balancing number, we would have spent 1.6 million of our unencumbered balance.
Correct.
But what the audit just proves is, we didn't spend that 1.6 million, bless
Bless
you,
you.
and we got another 1.6 million.
Yes, sir.
Revenues exceeded what we had
Right.
anticipated.
Because we didn't spend as much, or revenue came in
No,
higher than we wanted.
revenue did come in higher than what we anticipated. There's no doubt about that.
None of this is a judgment, just a statement of
No,
fact.
it's fact. Yeah.
And the statement of fact is, we ended the year basically $3.2 million better than we thought we would do when we did the budget.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
about
Yes, sir.
2.8 better.
That's a reality, because we didn't spend 1.6, and we got an additional 1.6, and I took calculus, so 1.6 and 1.6 is 3.2, right? And you as the auditor see that, and you pointed out the flow exactly, so I could see it in the audit.
It's,
Thank you.
I'll just explain it. Mr. Seeley said, it's just a way of looking at it. If you look from what we thought we would be at to where we are is the 3 million.
Right.
The actual cash is 1,000,006. So it's just how you want to.
We
We
got-
could
we
have
got
been
1.6
1,000,006 down.
Right.
We 1,000,006 ahead. You're 3,000,002 overall better than you thought you'd be. But you're
And-
really
and-
only dealing with 1.6 million, 1.5 million more cash.
And again, my point is it's not a judgment at all. We expect the county administrator's budget to be very conservative when it
yes.
comes to expenditures
And revenue.
and revenue. So we always do a little bit better in revenue, and you manage it so we can do a little bit better in expenditures. So whereas you say we're going to spend 1.6 of our unencumbered balance,
I didn't think
you
we
don't
would.
really expect that to happen.
No, it's
But if everything worked out in your budget like we thought, we would have spent that 1.6.
Correct. We had the ability to spend it had we spent everything out of everybody's budget.
And revenue had come in exactly what you thought and not more.
Right.
But the reality is, we didn't spend that 1.6 we planned to spend, and we got another 1.6 in additional revenue.
Correct.
That made $3.2 million in the difference. Okay, thank you.
Where's the debt page? Do you recall? I've seen it, I just can't locate it quickly.
There is a huge footnote in here on the debt. I think it's about,
It's always a footnote.
oh, yeah. Let's see.
Agreed.
I think it's note 8 is the county's long-term obligations. It starts on page 48. I assume that's what you want, is
Yes.
a little bit of detail. But note 8 is quite a few pages long also.
Need glasses. There we go. Yep.
And that includes all types of debt. So, I mean, it includes your leases and your revenue bonds, but it also, your liability for compensated absences, your net pension liability, your landfill closures in there, all pieces are rolling up into that $92.4 million of long-term debt or long-term obligations.
Mr. Kelly, do you recall outside of the energy contract, what our additional debt load we took on in last fiscal year?
Yeah, we leased, purchased 5 patrol cars, we bought a fire truck, an ambulance, and 3 school buses. 3. 2, yeah, it was, no, that's this year's budget. For the audit was, for this audited amount was 3. This year, we're in right now, we're buying only 2.
That would be a revenue bond, right? Is it-
Yeah, they're lease purchases, these ones that are like capital lease obligations. They all roll up into each other, you know, it's just various fire trucks and, because they're short, you know, the fire truck's
Yeah.
10 years and the patrol cars are 4 years. We bought a trash truck in this particular budget.
Right.
This one we're in now, we're buying a knuckle boom truck. So there's a lot of what I would call short-term debt. We didn't really add any long-term.
The contract for this
Page,
building's not
page,
in there?
page
Yeah,
54 is what
that's
I
in
was,
there.
actually what I was looking for.
Right.
So my colleagues can look at it.
At 1.6 million for lease purchases.
Would you say 64?
It's 54. Okay.
But yeah, that energy audit,
Is
We-
in.
it's not in this audit because, when did we do that?
I
When
thought
did
we
when
did
did we
it
get
before
that
the
money?
fiscal year.
I think, I've read it at least a dozen times in this audit about that contract.
I thought we did that in this budget we're in now. Yes.
But we, yeah.
Yeah, it's in this budget, so it'll be in the audit that they'll do next summer.
We signed the contract last fiscal year. We didn't make a payment last fiscal year or do the financing last fiscal year?
I don't think so, because it seems like to me that whole was in this budget. We just went it through in the spring, because it was a lot of consternation that we had added so much money. If y'all remember, yeah, it was all this.
$3 million in new revenue.
On page 53, 3.142, lease revenue bond issued in March. But I think that's what we're looking at, 2.9%. Down the page.
What page is he on?
53. I'm sorry, we got in the weeds a little bit, but
We might have issued it, but we don't owe payments, and so
okay.
it's in this budget. I know this whole
Okay.
project's starting and payback in the current 18 budget. I don't remember exactly when the bonds were sold. We had to do that whenever that was. But there's no payment until now. No matter what year it was in, the payments started in FY18.
My point for asking it was just so I would have a better understanding of when my constituents see that we came out 1.6 to the good as far as cash goes, there's an asterisk there because we took on about 1.6 in new debt in last fiscal year. So
Yeah, yeah.
the budget worked out great. I'm happy about how it worked out. I just wanted to, for my non-accounting mind, I'm just trying to balance it out.
It'd be nice to have bought all those things that we leased, but when we're doing all those leases, you don't know where you're going to end up on June 30th.
Agreed,
And when you're
agreed.
planning your budget, you're about 18 months from knowing what the final fund balance for that will be of what you're planning. So it's a lot of give and take in there with fund balance. So I try to be very conservative because you can go the other way 1.6 million too many times and you won't stay employed, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. Both. Thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
In the audit, do we lay out schools, county debt, and utility debt for the ending balance for the year?
We do, and that's in that same footnote that we were,
I thought I saw it, and then I wasn't sure I did.
although the school debt, let me see if we keep that separate. I don't think we separate the school debt per se, because it really is a
County debt.
obligation of the even though it's taken on for schools, it's reported in the primary government side of things. So it's in that $94 million, $92 million.
92 million? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Does that include the utility debt as well?
No, so the
No,
utility
no.
debt is underneath in that same table on page 48. Utility debt is about $40 million. And that's reported within the utility fund itself.
Does anybody ever break out the school debt separately in their audits?
Sometimes they do, but I mean, again, it's still going to be reported on the primary government side, but there is an option that we could break, in this footnote, we could separate the school debt from the county debt, if that was meaningful.
We have it. It's in the
It's
budget.
it, I mean, I know Fran keeps her records
Yeah,
that
yeah.
way as
Okay.
well.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing.
Well, is it more than the 25 million? Because we're still paying for a lot of things we did years ago, but like, give me a guesstimate, ballparkish. Wasn't it like 60 million?
Fran's earning her last night.
Up, down, up, down.
On page 52, there's at least 47 million that is school debt that's detailed.
Yeah.
It's all school debt, yeah.
Mr., yeah. Yeah,
That's fine, Mr. Chairman, we can get that
Right.
later. I just was curious if it was in here laid out, but she did show us where a preponderance of it is.
Mr. Underwood,
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions.
Mrs. Long.
None.
I had just asked Mr. Cully, at our meeting in January, I guess we could put it on the agenda, is to kind of, if you could show us the total debt. I don't think we've gotten a summary in that while, the total debt the county had maybe over the last, if we could go back 4, 5, 6 years, and then see what has happened to that debt over time in comparison to our budgets. So that way we can show the people that we're actually paying down debt, and we've got other things that are coming up on our books as well, so we can kind of get a clear, and buying more things, and so we kind of get a clearer picture instead of just kind of taking one side of it from this. I appreciate it. So anyone else, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
All right, Ms. Hatcher.
Good evening, Chairman Blank, members of the board, county staff. In your packet is the first quarter status report for the 3 months ending September 30th. This first quarter report is on an accrual basis, and I've actually set up a separate column for the cash basis just for this first quarter. That will go away after this first quarter. As may be seen in the attached summaries, 9.9% of the budgeted revenue for the major funds have been collected or billed. 26.7% of budgeted expenditures have been expended for the major funds. General fund revenues are $2,095,655, or 4.2% of budget estimates, which is $212,612 more than last year. On a cash basis, property tax collections are slightly higher than the same quarter in FY17. Sales tax revenue is about the same as last year. Your local communication taxes continue to be lower. Your business license collections and recordation taxes are up slightly, or are slightly lower in comparison to last year, but your building permits are up. Fines and forfeitures are higher than last year at 15.5% of budget. Overall expenditures in the general fund are slightly below the 25% threshold, as are most departments. All the departments continue to be conservative in spending. School revenues are 18.9% of budget, and expenditures are 26.5% of budget. Social service revenues are 15.9% of budget, lower than last year. Expenditures are below the 25% threshold. CSA revenues and expenditures are well below the 25%. This is a lot to do with timing on the CSA side. Debt retirement reflects revenues of 5.2%, and transfers from the general fund will be reflected in the next quarterly report. We only do those transfers twice a year. Meals tax revenues are lower than the same quarter than last year. Expenditures are 43.2% of budget due to timing of debt service payments. Operating revenues for the utility fund is 27.2% of budget, representing 3 months of billings. Operating expenses for the utility fund is 17.5% of budget, below the 25% threshold. Debt service for the utility fund is 69.8% of budget due to the timing of debt service payments. It should be noted, again, that actual operating revenues continue to be greater than actual operating expenditures. For the 3-month period, operating revenues were $298,041 higher than operating expenses. Your availability fees are 24.1% of budget, representing 12 water and 11 sewer fees paid through September 30th. Your Dawn wastewater fund billed operating revenues are 24.1% of budget. Your operating expenses are 25.6% of budget, and debt service is 50% of budget. Tourism reflects 21.4% of revenue collected and 13.4% of expenditures. Your transient occupancy taxes continue to increase slightly. All departments continue to monitor revenues and expenditures. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And yes, this is my last one.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Let's go down swinging, right, Frank? No, I don't really have a lot. The tourism fund reflects 21% of revenue collected. That seems to be a little bit small since there's a lot of travel in July and August and September, and I wonder if you could tell me why.
Because I keep these numbers and these percentages are on the accrual basis, which means that the revenues I collected in July and August went back to last year.
They went back to last year.
Yes, sir.
But I'm not an accountant, and I don't play one on TV.
Your
so-
lodging taxes and your meals taxes. The taxes that the vendor collects in June, we don't receive until July, which means they have to go back against June. We do it every year.
No. Excuse me, June I would understand going back, but July and August.
It depends on, not everybody pays their bills on time.
But part of the tourism fund is transient occupancy tax, so if I'm in the hotel in July,
No, not July, but what I'm saying is some of your vendors aren't always on time paying, so there could be, without having to get a detail from Beth to find out exact dates, most of what was collected in July went back to June. There could have been some that was collected in August that were also June, because the vendor was late paying.
okay. So that could probably explain a little bit, but since it's an accrual, I'm sure Mr. Finney will stop that though, right? It'll
No.
all be cash basis and we'll know exactly what we have right away, right?
See, he has the same terminology I do.
So we can't get you to come just to the cash,
Actually, come on.
come on down.
See, I
Come
kind
on
of
down.
See, Fran, I kind of let you off the hook a little bit by having him come in, but
He's going to say the same thing I do.
I understand you accountants are all alike. That's okay. GASB 34. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything disparaging to the other accountants.
No, it's not an issue, but yes, we have to follow GAAP and GASB, and basically when you get to your fiscal year end, you have to follow modified accrued, which means revenues or expenditures earned in the first 60 days of your fiscal year that goes back to the prior fiscal year, you
accrue it back.
It's not me.
He's got a transmitter on his body.
All right,
Not me.
so really, if we ever want to figure out how much transient occupancy tax we accumulate in a year, fiscal year July 1, June 30th, you can do that, right?
Yes.
You just refuse to do that because you want to report on it based on an accrual basis, right? So before,
You still get a full year every year.
okay, Mr. Cully. if
The audit's correct. Whatever's reported in the audit is.
No, I'm having too much fun. Mr. Cully, if you could possibly, by the end of the year, let me know how much money we've collected in transient occupancy tax last fiscal year, I would appreciate it. I'm just kidding,
Till
Frank.
you're out of the audit.
I'm just kidding. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Mr. Finney, you're going to have a good time.
Thank
Mr. Forehand,
you. I'm good.
Mr. Seeley.
I'm good.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Long.
I'm sad. But we will look forward to working with you, Mr. Finney. Thank you.
I have none, Fran and Joy.
Thank you.
See if you can get that report by tomorrow at 1.
All right, next up, we have 1B. I have an appointment to the EDA. I would like to reappoint Mr. Danny Carter to the Economic Development Authority. If I can get a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We are now at 7:26 to the consent agenda. So does anyone have anything from the consent agenda that they would like to pull?
Is Ms. Grasso here for just the insurance part of the consent?
Say what, Mr. Cully?
Okay. I said, is Ms. Grasso here for just the insurance part of the consent? I was going to let her go ahead. but-
Consent, I think she was here for the, if we take action on it at a later date.
Yeah, we originally had it on reports and decided because we're not asking for an increase or any change in rates that we put it on consent. And she's just here to help answer any questions. Should it be removed from consent and discussed?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item G.
Okay. Item G is pulled. Any other?
I'd like a brief discussion on, I emphasize brief, on L.
Just a statement on E, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, so, yep, we are going to, so can I get a motion? Is there anything else that needs to be pulled?
If you wait, we can do E. I just need to make a
Okay,
statement.
go for
on
it.
All right, E is the resolution for Monarchy Road. And just to make the board aware, especially those members who weren't on the board, I put that in when Monarchy Road was in the Mattapanai district.
And I appreciate it, Lord.
It's been 7 years at least, if not longer, since we finally get that. And you can also thank me for Ryland Road, which was another one we put in. It took 7 or 8 years. So that was just to let the board know how long it takes to actually get action done on roads we're adding to the system.
And they would have made the 6-year mark, but they've got to do some improvements to some drainage areas up there with the new stormwater policies. But thank you very much, Mr. Thomas.
I just remembered that one particularly because they called me at halftime of the Super Bowl to come out and look, and I did.
All right, can I get approval for items A, B, C, D, E, F, H, I, J, K, and M?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, letter G. Yep, Mr. Underwood.
Mr. Chairman, I know we talked about engaging McGuire and Woods for legal services regarding Aqua, which I disagreed with. I think I was the only vote outstanding of, I think it was 52,000 plus, is that correct?
For 45 for us.
45 for us. 45 for us. And then this proposal is for additional 25,000 for expert witness for the same project, is that
The
correct?
total, can I go for it? The total,
yeah.
the total project is 75. Okay, and so Tribble is part of, Tribble is going to be working with McGuire Woods, so they're like an expert. So their, Tribble is, 25,000 of that fee, of that 75 that we agreed to. You know, we agreed to 45, but there's 25 from Lake Landor, and then there's 7 from other counties. So we actually have 77 in hand right now.
You have 77,000 in hand. Can you go back to those numbers? We put up 45.
We put up 45, and Lake Landor put up 25, so there's 70. And then, and then other counties have put up 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for clarification.
You want to go ahead and do that one?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve consent agenda item G.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, letter L. Who pulled letter L?
I'm on 4L.
Mr. Fincham, this is a budget neutral item, I assume?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my only comment was, we have a set sitting on Ladysmith Road right now that's not being used, just in case they're needed elsewhere.
Okay. I think we might have some extras on 207 as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve L.
Second.
Motion is second, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so we've been, can we go ahead and take a 15-minute real-time, yes, we did, real-time break, so we will reconvene at 7:45. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and reconvene the December 12th Board of Supervisors meeting. At this time, we will take public comments. If there's anyone that would like to speak regarding anything that is not a public hearing, you may do so at this time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Scott Mosier, Bowling Green District. I came here tonight to thank you guys for the pay study that was conducted by your staff and the organization that you hired. I gave it some time, and I've really noticed a tremendous difference in the employees, and we really appreciate all you've done for us with that pay study. It was well received and well appreciated. And I don't know that any of them have had an opportunity to thank you, but I'm thanking you now on behalf of everybody in our department. And I did also see that you're in the process of looking at the constitutional officers, and we just thank you for looking at that as well and treating everybody the same. And thanks again.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to discuss anything that is not a public hearing? Once again, with that in mind, I'll go ahead and close public comments. We are now to the public hearing part of our agenda. And this is the proposed amendment of Part 2, General Legislation, Chapter 103, Taxation, the Code of Caroline County, to add Article 18, Payment of Taxes and Other Fees by Credit Card. Mr. Parton?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm going to set this up for Ms. Curran, and she will help answer any specific questions. Purpose of tonight's public hearing is to consider amending the county code to establish service fees for the use of credit cards to pay county taxes and fees to the treasurer's office. These fees are necessary to cover the county's cost in making use of credit cards available. As you recall, we discussed this topic at your last meeting and agreed to advertise a service fee of 1.25% for credit card payments actually in person at the office, and 2.25% for payments made via the internet. There is no charge proposed for the use of a debit card, and these are the service fee amounts that I just mentioned, or what is included in the proposed ordinance amendment. The county attorney has advised that these fees need to be codified, included in the county code, and that is the purpose of this public hearing tonight.
Does anyone have any questions before I open the public hearing? Any questions? With that in mind, I will go ahead and open the public hearing in regards to the proposed amendment for taxes and fees by credit card. At this time, is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this public hearing? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this public hearing? Okay, with that in mind, I will close the public hearing. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Curran before we go ahead and vote?
Ms. Curran, I just have one. Is it prudent to think about e-checks being included in case our new financial system will allow those?
We have not had a chance to look at e-checks because it's another daily activity that someone would be submitting that batch to the bank. And with personnel that we have right now, we haven't been able to figure out how we can do that, but we are taking a look at that. But I would imagine that the e-checks, we wouldn't charge a fee either since it's an ACH
So
batch.
it wouldn't need to be included
It
in
would
this
not need to be
ordinance
included
anyhow?
in the ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Anyone have any other questions? How does the board like to, how would the board like to deal with this matter?
I would move that the changes to the ordinance be accepted.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, item number 4, we have unfinished business. The discussion of the date for the Loving marker. So we're getting the marker sometime next week, and we just need to figure out a time for the ceremony. Is that what we're doing?
Do we really want to do it in the winter? I mean, we're to the, it's going to be 19 tonight, high of 38 tomorrow, and do we want to wait till like March, April? I mean, I don't, it doesn't matter to me, but I mean, I'm just thinking about standing out there and parking, and because that is going to be a tricky site as it is.
I think we do it like they planned to do it before. We stage here, basically ride down there and then come back.
Correct.
I'm waiting for Mrs. Fortune to send me a text back. She said December was out, and I told her the long-range forecast is the middle of January. It's supposed to be a break in the weather again, but long-range from now is iffy, but...
Yeah, that's the only bad part about planning something in January and February is, you get it all planned, and then you've got, a really cold day or a snowy day or whatever, or even a rainy day in February is no fun. But, I mean, we're something to do whatever the board wants us to do, but you could really, it could be a nice sunny day, but, 28 degrees. We just don't have any way of knowing.
And we really can, I mean, we can do everything we're going to do here, and then like we did, or like they planned before, ride a school bus down there. Pull the veil off. We pull the veil off, stop for a minute, and then come back here and do a reception. I mean, for what they had to go through, I don't think, as much as I hate the cold, I don't think standing in the cold for 20 minutes is going to hurt, but...
Mrs. Long?
Mr. Thomas, why don't we, my suggestion would be we wait to hear from the family. There might be a particular date that is important to them, a birthday, an anniversary date that falls somewhere in this field that they would like to try to get close to, but we should work it around the family.
That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
And
so
she
can
sent
we
me a-
just wait and
She just
do it
sent a
by
text
email?
five minutes ago. I was trying to see if she would send another one back, but I know December's out, according to her, so if it's okay with the board, as soon as I get a date from her, I'll give it to Mr. Cully, and you can give it to Pam, and we invite DHR and whoever else.
Just be on a
Works for me, just be on
just be on
a,
a weekend Or, I mean,
What would the board prefer, a weekend or?
well, I mean, just
weekday?
because of the fact that it's during the middle of a workday, I'm not going to, it's going to be difficult for us.
Three people.
And I don't
Yeah.
know, I never know if I'm traveling or not. I mean,
If it could
I
be,
get 3 weeks
if
notice.
it could be on a weekend, it would be better.
If a Saturday works for me, that's what I just sent her was,
He works at home.
so if the board can wait, I'll, make sure I get the, date from her, and I'll let Mr. Cully go, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Good with that.
All right, that works. Thank you. I guess we have now a 4B, which was the, Mr. Thomas.
Just the parking
Parking
on,
ordinance.
in subdivisions, and Mr. Fincham, you could give us the Reader's Digest version, please.
Okay. Can I ask Ms. Hatcher to come up and help with the presentation? I tried. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, very briefly, staff has prepared 2 different ordinance versions for the consideration of the Belmont Community Board of Directors. The board referred their preferred option back to Mr. Thomas, who forwarded it to me. So I think there might actually be 3 versions out there now. I have not had a chance to look at theirs. All those versions have been forwarded to the sheriff's office and the Commonwealth attorney. I made it very clear when I first drafted those that I was not an expert when it came to the enforceability of traffic or parking offenses. So that's been forwarded to the sheriff and to the Commonwealth attorney for their input as to the legal aspects and enforceability of the ordinance and any changes that they might need. I also copied Ms. Curran because as drafted, the fine would be collected by the treasurer's office, so she needs to weigh in on that, and I forwarded a copy of the different ordinances to her today as well for her to take a look at. Okay.
That all you need? Okay. All right, we will move right along then to agenda item number 5 under new business. Discussion of proposed amendment to the Code of Caroline to allow personal property tax relief for qualifying veterans.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is an issue that Mr. Thomas had asked staff to look into developing a county ordinance to provide personal property tax relief for disabled veterans. And there is language in the state code that would allow localities to establish a separate classification to either reduce or eliminate the personal property tax that's paid on one vehicle owned and regularly used by a disabled veteran. And the definition in the state code is the veteran has to have either lost the use of one or both legs or an arm or a hand, or be blind, or be totally and permanently disabled as determined by or certified by the Department of Veterans Services. So it appears that under the state language, the veteran does not have to be necessarily permanently and totally disabled to qualify under the state law. We've looked at the counties surrounding Caroline, and it appears that Hanover, Louisa, and Spotsylvania are the only ones providing this form of personal property relief at the moment. So if the board wants to proceed with an ordinance, staff is going to need some guidance on what that ordinance should contain. For example, what type of relief would you want to provide? Some localities, Hanover and Louisa, for example, provide 100% relief on that one vehicle. Hanover provides 50% relief. And then other localities, Loudon is one, actually establish an alternative tax rate for the vehicle. So we would also need to decide whether you're going to include veterans that met the definition that I read earlier but aren't totally and permanently disabled, or whether you're going to limit it to those who are permanently and totally disabled, as we do with the real estate tax exemption. So that's what we have discovered. As I indicated, we're going to need some input, some guidance from the board as to what you want the ordinance to look like before we can develop it for a first reading and public hearing, if you want to move in that direction.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, what is your...
I basically followed up on this from someone who I've known for a long time, asked me to look into it, and at first we thought we had to go to the state to get it done, and we don't. So, I mean, we talk well, we talk a lot, and this is a chance to actually do something, which is action. We talk about supporting the troops. If you lose hand, arm, leg, foot, whatever, and as the ordinance said, if you're declared disabled by the Veterans Board, I think you ought to get tax relief on your personal vehicle, just like we do with real estate. I mean, there are those who pay the ultimate sacrifice, and if you've seen somebody with PTSD, you would understand. So I would say that we allow one vehicle at 100%. I don't really care what kind of vehicle you have, because we're talking $100, $200 a year. So we should at least be able to make that kind of distinction. So I'd say one vehicle at 100% for that family. But whatever the board wishes to do, as long as we do something and make it retroactive to December 1st, I think that would be a good thing.
Mr. Forehand?
I'm going to hear from Mark first for a comment.
Yes, sir. Commissioner's
Oh, go ahead.
Commissioner's office was asked to do some estimate revenue loss to the county just based on factual, what we're able to do right now based on the current real estate tax exemptions, which is a state mandated program. There's about 94 to 95 accounts. This information was not readily available, so what we had to do was dig in and find it. So we matched up worst case scenario, highest valued vehicle with these 95 accounts, verified ownership and so forth. That came to about 60,000 in tax dollar loss, revenue loss. And then we also went into our DMV database and looked up the disabled veteran plates, and that came to about 11,000. So we're looking at currently what we're able to put our finger on, approximately 80,000 plus or minus. When you, just some things to consider. I did some research with the other commissioners, and also Carrie Ann Alford, who is the Director of Policy and Planning at the Virginia Department of Veteran Services. She also made mention that the state is currently working on a plan similar to the real estate veteran exemption plan, but of course, dealing with the state, there is no timetable. So in talking with her to clarify the language in this code, I'm finding as a new commissioner, code is not black and white. There's a lot of gray, there's a lot of area for give and take. I would consult with the county attorney. I was advised by Nick Morris with state taxation to check with the county attorney as far as how you really want to propose this language. Do you want to mirror the exact language in the code? And we need to be mindful, there are a lot of 100% totally and permanently disabled veterans that do not own real estate that may own personal property. So that $80,000 figure, plus or minus, truly could, sky's the limit.
That's 80 at 100% though, right?
That's the 100% real estate exemption plus the accountable disabled vet tags, DMV tags.
But that's a maximum number I mean, as ballparky as we can get.
Yes.
Okay.
Solid, what we can account for right now.
And that would be if we were to give them 100% reduction.
That's at 100%. And speaking with Scott Harrison Hanover, they do the 50% relief, and he actually brought up a really good point in talking with me. On our personal property right now, we're kind of capped out at 100% of clean trade. We can't go back. It's the board's pleasure. However, you might want to consider starting off at a different percent and work down, because if you start at the bottom, you can't go back. Opposed to going to 100%, maybe 50%, such like what Hanover does, as an example.
Now, Spotsylvania does 100, though, don't they?
I think Spotsylvania was one of the ones, and we also, the name, this code really isn't an exemption or anything. It's a alternative tax rate. So when they're saying 100%, it's like 0.0001 times 100, which creates $0, on the bill. So.
Mr. Emerson, on the tags, the disabled veterans tags, motor vehicle tags, is that only available for people who have permanent and total disability, or is that available for the missing an arm and a leg as well? I'm just not familiar with that.
I'm going to defer to our DMV, Caroline County's DMV expert.
When in reference to the plates, the qualifying factors do vary. They stick closely to the code. So you're looking at an assortment of veterans who qualify for that plate, but they're the ones who have been declared by Veteran Affairs as disabled. And they qualify at that point.
Okay.
The plate is free.
Okay.
So in essence, they will qualify in any other program that you administer.
Right.
All right.
Well, that was what I was sort of getting at, was that if those two categories, one the plates and the other the other category that you talked about, the real estate, they're dealing with totally and permanently disabled veterans. So under this statute for the exemption now that we're talking about, you have not only the permanently disabled group, but you have a group of other people who've only lost, I say only, but I don't mean it that way, but lost an arm or a leg or a hand or are blind. So you could conceivably increase that category of permanently disabled substantially, depending on what other classifications of disability you include.
A fair estimate would be almost 3 times what we're currently looking at, because currently we don't have precedents that we have a code or anything that's allowing them to take advantage of anything other than a plate, and right now that's been limited down to, versus this state code kind of opens it up.
Right, so it just could be a much larger group of people that would qualify, depending on how you word the ordinance.
But the existing state code that says you can do that says permanently disabled.
Permanently or totally. There's a lot of ors.
Right.
There are really no ands in this particular code.
Right.
Because they're focusing on 58.1, the 3506, section 19.
That's
Now,
what we get.
if you do like some localities and try to tie that into your elderly relief programs, you really don't have a whole lot of support as far as the state backing from the state code aspect, because then when they incorporate limits on income, those fields are not supported by this code.
Right, and that code basically says if you are disabled, then you get personal property tax relief.
Correct.
So, I mean, you're the lawyer, but if I were the disabled person in this case, I would be petitioning for the taxes that I already paid, and I don't know how much that would cost us. There's a state code. This particular gentleman said the county was not complying with the state code.
No, that's not correct.
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
Okay, so what's
The
correct?
the code section that she just mentioned has about 6 pages of nothing but lists of items, 1,
Correct.
2, 3. And what that section says is that you may make any of these items, or all of them if you want, have a separate
tax classification for personal property. So, and it lists all sorts of things, boats, aircraft, all sorts of stuff. So it's just like when you set the tax rate for real estate, machinery and tools, anything else, this will be another category, just like machinery and tools. It will be a vehicle owned by a vet who has one of these disabilities or is totally disabled. And then you would set so that's the first thing you do. Then the second thing you do is if you establish that classification, then the second thing you do is you establish a tax rate for it. And that could either be done by saying, okay, we're going to charge, X number of dollars per value of the vehicle and all, or you could say, well, we're going to charge you, we're going to waive 50% of whatever would otherwise be due on the vehicle, which is the better way to do it, frankly, or 75% or 100%, whatever you wanted to do. But it's not required by state law by any means.
It's optional by the localities.
Yeah.
Right now, it's optional, but, it's like I said, in speaking with Carrie Ann down at Veteran Services, the state is working on something, but again, there's no timetable. So
Right.
we may eventually have, end up doing it anyway.
But I think, my personal opinion is I think this is something that we should show the leadership and say, thank you for your service and we understand and here's a small token. 50% of my car is not going to bring my hand back or arm back or whatever. So if you want to support the troops, this is how you can support them.
In that same mind frame or
Yes, ma'am.
standpoint, when considering such an addition to your ordinance, there are other facets to consider. You'd also want to consider, because the code addresses the vehicle being owned, but not solely owned, there's some other facets you want to consider. Is this vehicle to be solely owned by the veteran? Does that benefit, if you tie it into your elderly relief programs and things of that nature, does that exemption, well, lack for a better term, it's not an exemption, it's a classification, would that in turn pass on to the surviving spouse, and a number of other things that you'd want to consider?
Well, I think we're just at this point, Mr. Chairman, we're trying to decide if we want to do it, yes or no, and if we do, I'm sure your expertise will be called upon.
The problem with doing just a yes and no on this type of thing is when you go back to change and do the additions, sometimes that's more difficult.
Oh, but we're not writing the ordinance. Are we going to write the ordinance now? We're just saying.
Not at this moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we're going to make sure you're involved when that happens.
And, the Commissioner's office, let me be clear, it's at the board's pleasure, and we're ready to implement the program. It's a simple procedure in the Bright system that we currently have, so either way, we're ready to go however you decide.
Mr. Forehand, did you have any more questions, or were you done?
I'm open to entertain it. I would like to start out, as was referenced, at a lower percentage than 100, I think it'd be more of a total disability that is service-related, and not, and there are some exceptions, looking at the other ordinances and things like that, but I know that, and I have a lot of friends that have long service, and they appear to be able-bodied, and one of them actually works for me now, and he's got a significant disability from his prior service, and you would never know. And I would not expect this to really apply to him, because he's out there and he's working and taking. But we could specify 100% disability.
It depends on his disability, but there's no, it would apply if the person has whatever the specified disability is.
He's not at 100%, but it's up there. But
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Want to
Mrs.
go
Long?
down? That's okay.
Yeah,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Seeley?
Could you take a look at Sandra, what you would think would be, give us some options? I mean, I don't mean tonight. Yeah, I'm not even talking tomorrow. But, I mean, I work in an industry, there are a lot of disabled vets. and it changes year to year. They go for reevaluation. You know, as you get older, that disability gets more intense. I'm with you, I don't know how many there are. I don't think there's any way of knowing till you start the program and you start to see what happens. I'm at something around 50% to get our arms around it, but to look at I'd like to see real particulars. Solely owned vehicle, I think there's some points you brought up that are very good. I know putting our arms around an ordinance, we did the fireworks ordinance, we spent a year trying to correct something that we couldn't ever get our arms around, and what I don't want to do is march down a path like that with somebody's life and their tax situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I kind of agree with my colleagues. If we could get Mr. Bassoon and staff to look at the language, I think we can come back and talk about the percentage in terms of impact. Give us some leadway as to move up or down in the impact, but certainly I think they could help us with the language and what the ordinance should read. So
Sure.
I'm in favor of that.
Thank you. Mrs. Long?
I agree that we need some more research, but one thing I would like to get a handle on is the definition of who would qualify. I remember having a conversation with a member of the board from Stafford County who said when they adopted a law for veterans, this guy came in and he was just missing, you know, one little digit on his finger, and he said, "I'm disabled, I want my tax break." Yeah, I think there's a wide range there, and conditions change. Hopefully, some of the conditions get better, and they wouldn't qualify, but we can't just have a blanket statement that you're disabled. So that would probably fall more in Ben's court as far as figuring out what the Department of Veterans Services actually bases their qualification on, and how we would be allowed to modify that. And then we get more information and we look at this.
It's pretty clear in the code. I mean, I actually used the finger example today, talking to Alan and Mr. Cully about what would qualify you as being disabled. I mean, it's very clear. It's an arm, or two arms, or a hand, or two hands, or a foot, or being blind. It doesn't say one eye, it says blind. It doesn't say a finger. Or certification from the Department of Veterans Services that they are permanently and totally disabled. And so we don't really have any choice with any of those categories if you include them in the ordinance.
Yeah, it's not
Can you-
subjective at all.
Can you say service disability, and not just
It
health?
has to be a veteran, but actually the code doesn't say that the disability had to be obtained during the service, during combat or service. It's just a veteran who is disabled in one of these ways.
Service
connected.
It does say.
So does it say that?
It's service connected.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So the
Sorry.
qualifying information they would have to bring that paperwork
Right.
from
From the
VA.
service.
From Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
To say, I've got this disability, it's just like the high mileage vehicle. I bring you my inspection, it says I got 110,000 miles, you check it off and say, okay, here's your value. I bring you a certificate that says, you know, from the VA that says I'm disabled, you check it off, it's not subjective. They either have something or they don't. And that comes from the VA. And I think in this particular case, the gentleman had something. I don't know how much of those folks, you know, that you
They
know.
all do.
Then they all have
They
something.
all do.
So, you know, that's kind of it. You have to get, but I mean, you have to get something from the VA that says you're disabled. You know,
That was the classification in doing the research here for this background. All of these particular veterans have
Okay.
their certification from the administration.
okay, great. Well, thank you. Thanks for that.
And you know, when
that's
you're
good.
talking about language, you have to be so careful because right now, the real estate exemption specifically says 100% totally and permanently disabled. This particular code section just says permanently and totally, not 100%. And I actually put that question out to the Commissioners Association. Is that to be interpreted as 100%, because there are different letters that come from the VA for the real estate exemption piece, and we have to send them back, and sometimes it's not pleasant, and say it has to say 100% when the VA misprinted or sent them something that wasn't mirroring the state code. This one doesn't say 100%, and there's still a lot of pull and tug with VA too, getting their paperwork and language matched up with code. And
But can we, I think we've all,
Right.
well, you had a lot of good questions, but can we move forward with the ordinance process while you incorporate those questions into what they're going to craft?
Yeah.
Are you going to say, I mean, you're saying, no, we're not going to do this?
No, I'm saying I think everybody needs a fair chance to read what gets written.
Yeah, but we're saying we're going to move forward and start writing something.
Well,
Yeah, we
Right.
still have to approve it, but
Right.
let's not sit here and say, let's wait till we see something, because nobody will do anything, so we'll never see anything. We have to say, let's proceed with the ordinance for them to start doing something, so you can see. If they don't proceed, so I'm going to make a motion, thank you so much for your help and your assistance. I'm going to make a motion that we proceed in developing an amendment to the code to allow personal property tax relief for qualifying veterans. And they'll develop the language with staff, then we'll have something to look at. First reading, second reading, third reading.
So did you make a motion?
I made a motion.
Okay, I'll second it. A motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, we are to number 6, proposed increase for constitutional officers. I'm going to start on this one. I got to be honest with you, when I read this, I was a little bit shocked. And maybe this should have been part of the salary study. When the salary study came out, we didn't do in any shape, ways, or form any sort of percent increase. We looked at salaries and compared them to surrounding jurisdictions based on a list of jurisdictions that we picked. My personal opinion on this, and I have not spoken with others on this, so I don't know what their personal opinion is. I can't go with a 5%. I just can't do that. What I would like to see is, since we're talking about, what, 5 or 6 positions, probably total in the county, what I would like to see is, since it wasn't part of the salary study, is have staff kind of use the same localities that we did use in the salary study. What are people in these positions getting in other counties? So then we can have some sort of idea on what other one of these people are getting. Because just to say tonight that to give a blanket 5%, I don't think that's fair to the employees that went through the salary study to begin with, and I don't think that would be fair of us to do, not knowing the facts. And I think the facts are out there with comparison to other localities. So that's my opinion. Mr. Thomas, do you have anything? Mr. Forehand?
That's fine. Some might end up being 3%, some might end up being 8%.
Yeah, and that's what happened in the salary study, though. I mean, some people were near where they were supposed to be, and then other people needed to be raised much more significantly. So I don't think I think we need to kind of figure that out first. Mr. Seeley?
I was going to ask Mr. Cully, I mean, you obviously did something to come up with this, so what is this 5% based on?
Well, their last increase was July 1, 16, so it was about 18 months ago. And so the employees that were in the salary study, we had anticipated would, have a raise, July 1 of this past year, and these were just left out. So it was just to come up with some percentage. What I looked at was not their total salary, but their comp board salary, because some of them are subsidized heavily compared to others. And some of those that have been subsidized heavily based on being on our pay plan and have worked here a long time are making a lot more than some of the others that are newly elected. They're on our pay plan, but they haven't gotten all those raises for 15, 18, 20 years, whatever it might have been. So I just kind of stuck to their comp board salary, try to make it across the board.
So is that
without looking at
statewide?
years of service or any of those types of things, because there again, I can show you what that chart looks like when you go years of service. That's some of the ones that are already making most of the top salaries of those constitutional officers. And then you start adding salary on top of all of the subsidy. You're just creating more than 50% subsidy for some. And then the ones that are just newly elected and only been here a year or two are going to get, not much of anything. And they're not getting an adjustment based on a salary study, because their salaries are based off of what the comp board starts them at to begin with. So that's why I didn't try to go back and say, all right, we're going to salary study them. It was just basically a little more than 2.5% over a 2-year period. I mean, because they're 18 months in, recommending starting them at January 1. It wasn't a retro back to July of this year. It was just finish up this year, and then whether they get anything next year or not would be based on what is done with the rest of the employees in this current budget environment. Otherwise, they could end up going multiple years. So the salary study people have gotten a raise effective September of this year that we're in, and if there is no raise moving forward next year, which we don't know yet, then these folks would go another year, so they would be multiple years behind the people that were in the salary study. So I was just trying to catch them up somewhat to the rest of the salary study employees. That's all.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Your constitutional officers, several of those positions are set by the state based on population. So you cannot compare them to other jurisdictions because their populations are different. So almost every one of them, I mean, the clerk of the court is a good example. It states in code that's what you're going to pay based on that population. We do a stipend on top of it, but you can't compare it to another jurisdiction because it may not be the same. So most of your constitutional officers...
Are you saying that, so if I'm the Commissioner of Revenue, or if I'm clerk of the, whatever the case might be, in a county or city of Fredericksburg, because they're comparable population with us, they're going to be getting the same automatically?
Yes.
From the state?
From the state.
But not necessarily from the locality?
Not necessarily from the locality.
So why couldn't I make the comparison?
Because every one of your jurisdictions are different, and the requirements on some of the positions are different. Your Commissioner of Revenue and your Treasurer, there are certification differences. So you could have a new commissioner that you can't compare to others because of their certifications, and the state sets the certifications. And that one is also population-driven. So I don't think they compare it to like the city of Fredericksburg. They have their own little thing for cities. They have different for counties. The state establishes based on that kind of thing, and also based on term. So it would be hard to compare it to other jurisdictions because of the way the state established the base salary to start with.
And the only thing I would add is normally we've done raises across the board since I've been here. The constitutional officers have been included in that, the ones that are on our pay plan, which has been all of them other than the Commonwealth Attorney. So that's what I'm saying. They sort of were left out of the salary study procedure and then are not getting any raise. And if there's no across the board, and I'm not predicting this, I don't know, but if there's none for July 1, then they'll be moving into another year without any raise at all when the rest of the whole organization receives something. That's the only reason I made the recommendation. It's certainly, if 5 is too much, 2% something, otherwise, that's all I was trying to bring the discussion forward, because they normally, say we hadn't done the salary study and we had put in $500,000 for raises, they would have been included in that if it had just been divvied up evenly for July 1, because that's how raises in the past have been done, and they would have gotten a raise on their whole salary supplement and everything, so I wasn't trying to recommend that, but I was trying to get them something in that 18-month period that they've worked and managed those departments for the same money. So they normally would have gotten one with a regular cost of living if we had done one.
But other constitutional officers do get I'm sure they are receiving supplements, as she's talking about, from their locality, correct? So we know that the base is the same because it's based on population, correct? That's what you just said, that
It can be if you find a jurisdiction that has that same base, but I think all we can do is find out if they will give us, if we do this study, how much is the comp board salary and how much is the supplement. But I don't think you'll find every salary. The comp board salaries will probably be different as you draw a circle around and use those same counties we used for the study. So the comp board salary may be higher and the supplement lower, or what, I mean, we don't know. We'd have to survey all that.
I think Ms. Hatcher said that it's by population, correct? The comp board salary is based on population, correct?
Population and some certifications and those type of things, because
Some other, you don't know what they are, but you do know the base first, without the other certifications and so forth. I would imagine that would be added on. Yes, public record, I would think.
it's at the comp board. We could just ask the comp board for it. I mean, I would
Right.
assume
So
they
then,
could
so
give us
then the question is, what additional supplements are receiving, and is it comparable? And I think that's what we look at. I think it's doable. It may not be an exact science, but I think we can come up with a methodology that works to give us some indication of where we are. But I'm not prepared at this point to vote on the increase. I can say that.
Just for reference, Mr. Cully, would you explain to the members of the board how the other elected officials in the county get raises?
Now, the Board of Supervisors and the school board have to vote for a raise in the spring prior to a majority of the board being elected, and then it goes into effect in January after that election. And that's a code requirement. Not if there's any other you may know.
I don't know exactly the procedure. There's another procedure that's an alternative to that. So if you wanted to give a raise to a sitting board member prior to an election, I think you have to have a public hearing, and there may be one or two other hoops. There's a way to do it. But I know you have to have a public hearing and advertise it and say what the raise is going to be and that sort of thing.
Mrs. Long?
All right, that's because everybody wants to avoid a public hearing.
Mrs. Long?
I think I have to see some information simply to answer questions when citizens ask why the raise. And we need to have some facts and figures. I'm not doubting that they need to be included, but we need to look at percentages. We can't just blindly raise it, and I'm not doubting your suggestion. We'll probably come back close to what you suggest, but we need to have something to look at.
So I guess and that was my sentiment all along. I mean, that's how the salary study was done. If the comparison comes back that a particular constitutional officer is way underpaid based on the comp board, then we need to adjust that. If the salary comes back and says, hey, their comparison, they're not, I mean, that's a discussion that we need to have. So if we could have staff go ahead and do the best, I guess, compared to what would the best comparison be? Like-minded, I guess would have to do like-minded localities? Like populated localities, is that you're comparing them to? So if we could come up with, I guess, whatever your methodology, 7, 8 localities that are similar in size to us would be the best comparison. Do we need that in a motion, or is it just a direction? Direction. Yep, so it's direction to do that, and then we can come back to us. Can you guys have that ready by the end of January? Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to number 7.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I just make a motion, we go ahead with number 7? I mean, this windowsills are cracked, you can't seal them.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, number 8, informational, informational calendar items.
I have one question on the informational items. Have we ever gotten to the bottom of the spending at the high school? Before Fran leaves,
No, no, the RV's warming.
you just leave the block heater plugged in, it'll still be warm when you get in. Last item on, yeah, is it an accrual over 20 years or what?
What was your original question?
We have a huge dispute over how much has been spent on the capital projects that we've never gotten resolution to. We, as in the board. Can you tell me, because we were $1 million off during our last discussion, where are we in actually checking off each item and each receipt and each payment, and where are we in terms of the cost? On the schools, just the construction.
We have fully expended all the bond monies. We are now into the insurance monies that the board approved under a spending plan. And I think Madison, there's about 120,000 left.
120,000 left in the whole million?
No, there's about 120 left to be spent on Madison.
How much is left in the contingency fund when they're done with this?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, so I'd have to give you my little spreadsheet, and I'll be glad to share that with you.
Is it less than a $500,000? Big, just round numbers. I won't make you. Can we just get some resolution to that? Because we're getting ready to go in, and it just seems like with the audit report that we got and the accounting that was done, it really makes me wonder where we are in this, because we've been round and round and round with their bills and what we actually think they've spent and what they thought they spent.
I have what we have actually spent, and that is down to the penny.
But they're still disputing what's actually been spent.
They are having issues with one of the contractors on change orders, which are credits that are due and various things.
You can't get a credit and spend it too.
Right, no, I understand that, but that's part of the balance sheet issue. We know to the penny what has been spent, both with the contractors and on materials for the whole job.
Can we get the disputed number, the real number, and
Yeah, we can show you that.
before you leave, because I know you've been a critical mass in that, I'd just like a final sheet so that Mr. Finney, when he comes to us next month and we start down this with the school board in our joint meeting, looks at us and goes, Fran had those. So can we all see what they think, what we know, and the delta?
I can try to get whatever I can from Kim at the schools. I know they are still talking about these credits, whatever. We all did agree on exactly how much was still owed to Haley on the one school, and I've kept that in stone, so they're not going over that. And Dr. Parker did have a very detailed spending plan for the rest of it, which he brought to the board.
I didn't think we ever approved the whole rest of the other million.
We approved everything but anything that was recurring expense. So anything that had to do with the school constructions, you all did pass.
All what we didn't approve was they wanted to use money moving forward into this coming budget. We're getting ready to plan for health insurance for
Right. We
increases.
did not- y'all did not approve
That didn't
that.
get approved.
So there's still money left over, though, of the million?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
$450,000.
Yeah, I'd just like to get some accounting, snap a line, because, and I'm curious, and you and Mr. Cully, do we need to have somebody come in and audit that independently?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And we were working, this was coming out of, not as much out of finance as you saw in the audit, wasn't a lot of things. This was working through their public works superintendent and his staff, where these bills were coming from, so it was sort of a different finance. It wasn't finance, it was the guy overseeing the project. And so the real dilemma right now is with the contractor and these owner purchase materials versus what was in the contract and the credits that need to go in the contract, and a dispute of that the school, we can't resolve because we're not party to any of it. But we can show you exactly what's been spent to date, what's been spent to each contractor, and what's been spent on materials. And the problem is what's still owed to the contractor in the contract because it needs to be change ordered out. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because of the owner purchase materials.
I want to see real numbers.
We'll give you the
that we can
numbers.
put check
We have
marks
all
next
those. We
to.
have all those numbers, but I don't think it needs an independent audit.
Okay, just curious.
And we did get the, another invoice on Haley for Madison, and that one, that has, as far as I know, has been, as far as Haley's concerned, has been, whether they've gotten the work done or not, that's on the school side. I can't do anything about that.
Correct.
But as far as the numbers, that has, and then he actually had it corrected and has final, so it's, we're within $1,700 on that.
Okay. All right, thank you for your final, almost final.
Okay.
As you can see, and this came up earlier, and without having this, the energy savings contract, the $3,017,058 it's in this list, and we've spent $1,800,730. So it's in this year's. We might have borrowed the money, but it all placed and rolled over into this year. So just so that you can see that is winding down. On the calendar, don't forget tomorrow, starting at noon, at Town Hall, we have the board-sponsored employee luncheon. The first seating's at noon. There'll be another one at 1 o'clock because we divide that up into 2 servings to people through. 3 to 5 on the 14th, we have a retirement reception for both Blanche Johnson and Fran Hatcher, and that's in the county admin board meeting room upstairs. Bowling Green Christmas Parade, 5 p.m. Saturday. Offices close at noon on the 22nd, and then obviously the 25th and 26th offices are closed. January 1st is on Monday, and then Tuesday the governor gave that day off as well, so we're off on the 1st and 2nd. We'll be back to work on the 3rd, and the board meeting will be on the 9th. So we'll come back to work on the 3rd, and we'll have a board packet to produce for the 4th. So welcome back, Alan. And then in January, Lee Jackson is on the 12th, and Martin Luther King holiday is on the 15th. And then our second board meeting we already talked about. We have a meeting that we didn't have on the calendar, but we must have need to agree to with the schools at 4:30. So we'll make sure that the calendar gets updated. That we have that set for 4:30 on the 23rd.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, would you mind if we didn't get our board packet until January 5th? That would give the staff a day or two to come in.
Yeah, that's fine.
Does that work, Mr. Cully?
That will help us immensely. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And then the last thing I think for January is the annual Fire and Rescue Awards Banquet at Bowling Green Town Hall on the 27th of January at 6 p.m. And that was a very nice event last year.
That was excellent.
Mr. Cully, when the offices close early, does that include the convenience sites?
No, I don't think so. The community sites run on a almost schedule unless it's a. And yeah, they're off every Wednesday and Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And that's pretty standard in every community. It's sort of like the sheriff's office and the fire department. They still have to work. And some of our public utilities guys as well. That's all.
Thank you. All righty. Closing board comments. Close.
Well, no, we got comments first, so people can leave.
Okay, yeah, let's just do closing board comments first, and then we can do. Okay, let's just do closing board comments first, because no one's going to be here when. Okay, Mr. Thomas.
I don't have any.
Mr. Seeley.
Thank you, Fran, for all of the time and all of the questions and all of the repeats.
Mr. Underwood.
No comment.
Mrs. Long.
No comments.
And I would just like to reiterate, I want to thank the rest of the board peers once again. I had a blast as chairman. I actually enjoyed being the chairman for the year. I also want to thank, I wore out Mr. Parton almost on a daily basis, so thank you for all the work that you've put in. So I really do appreciate it. So, and working with Ms. Long and everyone, it's been truly a pleasure, so thank you. All right, now we are to, Ms. Long, you are.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that this board convene in a closed meeting pursuant to the prospective business exception of Section 2.2-3711A5 of the Code of Virginia to discuss two potential business and economic development projects that would be new to the county, which are considering locating Carmel Church and Ladysmith areas, and about which no previous public announcement has been made. And second, the investment of public funds and public contract exceptions for Section 2.2-3711A6 and 29 of the Code of Virginia to discuss matters pertaining to the negotiation of contracts related to the Pubenson Creek Regional Jail and the potential purpose of two small water systems in the Port Royal area.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Caroline County Board of Supervisors certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, that only the public matters, business matters lawfully accepted from the open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting to which this certification applies. And secondly, that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
So second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Thomas, do you certify that everything that was discussed in closed session was accurate to what the closed session was announced for?
I so certify.
Mr. Forehand?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Chairman, I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mrs. Long?
I so
And I
certify.
so certify as well. Could I, at this time, get a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned.